All right, Shalom. I'd like to start out with saying Ka Halayim La Yahweh, Ba Hashem Yahweh Shai, Ba Hashem Harakak Radash Ma'amath. Double honors to the elder apostles, a great millstone, and my elder Herawan as well. Salutations to the Akim that are pushing the truth, sincerity, and truth. And peace and blessings to the men, women, and children that believe in the name of Yahweh Ba Hashem Yahweh Shai. All right, I'm Kanaksa Anbar Yashar from the Lions in the Yashar camp. And this lesson is going to be somewhat of a continuation of a two-part lesson that I did, and the name of that lesson was, bear with me one second. The name of that lesson was "A Nation Divided Against Itself Cannot Stand." All right, and I was talking about how America was founded on division, and that concept of division is what they use to take over the world. So separate all the nations while while the elites unify within themselves and control the whole world. And one of the Akim, Zaria, was like, because I went into a little bit of Genesis 16 dealing with Ishmael and how all those Arab nations, Esau has divided them up, and how they all are fighting is just major wars from centuries and centuries going on in that area, going into Genesis 16 and 11. And he was like, but I only touched on it, and I was gonna do a part 3 going into it, and I decided not to. And he said, hey, he would be interested in part 3, so here it goes. So the scripture I'm talking about is Genesis chapter 16. Genesis chapter 16, verse 11, it says, "And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child." And he was talking to Hagar, and she was pregnant with Abraham's son Ishmael. All right, it says, "And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction." Right. So there was a prophecy dealing with Ishmael, but Ishmael wasn't the lineage that the children of the promise was going to come through. It was Isaac. Isaac was taken up on the mount, not Ishmael. Right. So these Muslims will try to say Ishmael was taken up there, but no, it was Isaac. All right. The children of the promise went through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay. All right, verse 12. It says, "And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." All right. So the part I want to focus on is his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And that's exactly what you see going on over there in the Middle East, dealing with the Arabic nations. Constant war. You got everybody from every dang near every country or every nation over there fighting against them, for them, with them, using them for proxy wars to fight other nations. And a lot of that's done by America. Well, Esau in general, because Russia played their part in it. America has played a major part in it, in dividing those households over there, those nations. So I want to go into a couple of wars that went on, explaining his hand against every man, and every man his hand against him. And the first one I want to start with is and it goes all the way back like to the 40s and the 50s and 30s with war over there in that land. And there's a bunch of different countries. Like, say, for instance, 1939 and 1945, you had France, Britain. In the war, it's just the Mediterranean and Middle East theater World War II. It says Italian invasion of Egypt, bombing of Bahrain in World War II, Italian bombing of mandatory Palestine in World War II, Anglo-Iraq War, and the French was involved in it too. So, what dating way back from even before that, there's war over there in that land, dealing with all these different nations, right? You had here in 1963 to 1963 riots in Iran, where Iran was going at it with them. Those are the Persians, right? That's another nation having conflict over there in the Middle East, or what they call the Middle East. All right. You got the Turks, 1976 to 1980. The political violence in Turkey, war over there in that area. Turkey, which is Esau, you know, primarily Esau over there in Turkey. So, so the one I want to focus on right now is 1990 to 1991 Operation Desert Storm or Desert Shield, the Gulf War, and I think Papa Bush was in office when this went down. All right, he was the first one to wage that over there in the Middle East. This is when America heavily got involved with war over there. Well, you had the things with the thing with the OPEC nations and stuff like that, and they were trying to saying they would protect the oil fields and just to use the dollar in the trade. So you had the OPEC nations that were formed with the Saudi nations, but this right here had an agenda behind it. When they went in for the Operation Desert Storm, the agenda was to ultimately divide up the Middle East. All right. So within that, they destroyed households and divided families. I want to get a scripture real quick. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. It says, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith." Right? And faith is what holds us through going through all these things and understanding that this is all the will of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua unto his glory and unto our salvation. All right. It says, but the soul that's in Esau is not upright in him, because in the so-called name of democracy and peace, they were destroying families and houses and lineages to push their agenda, man. Matter of fact, pause that right there. Let me get Psalms. Um, 50, 55. All right, verse 20. All right, it says, he had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. Right. So ultimately that's talking about the children of Israel. But in this sense right here, there was treaties and covenants made with these countries over here in the Middle East that America made. And they used these Middle Eastern countries and really trying to kind of broke those treaties with proxy wars. And this is one of them that started out. This wasn't a proxy war. This was an all-out war against these Iraq. All right. Well, against Kuwait, which is in Saudi Arabia. We're going to get into that, but we just want to read the scripture. It says, he had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. Right. Nobody was bothering America when they went over there, man. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, but yet they were drawn swords, right? So they went over there and so-called in the name of democracy, saying they're going to liberate those people from the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. Or the other way around, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to read it in a second. So, and it says, back to Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, it says, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlarges his desires as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, and gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people, right? So he is as hell, and everywhere he goes, he brings hell and death, man. And he's never satisfied, but he heapeth unto him all nations, man, and gathered unto himself all people, just to fulfill his heart's desire, which is wickedness, man. All right, so going into a little bit dealing with this Gulf War, it was around from 1990 to 1991. All right. And let me go into it a little bit. It says the Gulf War was a 1990 to 1991 armed campaign waged by a 35-country military coalition in response to the Iraq invasion of Kuwait, spearheaded by the United States, who was the spearhead for NATO. All right. The coalition efforts against Iraq were carried out in two key phases: Operation Desert Shield, which marked the military buildup from August 1990 to January 1991, and Operation Desert Storm, which began the aerial bombing campaign against Iraq on July 17, 1991, and came to a close with American-led liberation of Kuwait. See, liberation. That's what they're talking about. They're coming in the name of democracy, whatever. On February 28th, 1991. On August 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded neighboring Kuwait and had fully occupied the country within 2 days. Initially, Iraq ran the occupied territory under a puppet government known as the Republic of Kuwait. But see, so America wanted to put who they wanted in the power over there, and guarantee that's probably why they invaded Kuwait, because of their influences by America. So why would America just jump to the rescue like that if it wasn't, so allegedly though. All right, it says initially Iraq ran the occupied territory under a puppet government known as the Republic of Kuwait before proceeding with an outright annexation in which Kuwaiti sovereign territory was split, with the Saddamite al-Militia district being carved out of the country's northern portion of the Kuwait government. All right, so what is this summon? All right, it says the Saddamite al-Militia was a district of Bashra government during the Iraq occupation of Kuwait in 1990 to 91. The formation of the district was announced on August 28, 1990. The same sought to honor the Iraqi president Saddam Hussein, while the rest of Kuwait was annexed. All right, so Saddam Hussein, I guess, took over that portion of Kuwait, of Saudi Arabia, and then the other part was by some other ruler. And Saddam Hussein was the one that they put on trial in front of everybody, hung him in front of everybody, for dealing with chemical weapons on the people, when he got it from America. He got it from America. It says verily, speculations have been made regarding the true intents behind the Iraqi invasion, most notably including Iraq's inability to repay the debt of more than 14 billion that it had borrowed from Kuwait to finance its military efforts during the Iran-Iraq war. Kuwait's demands for repayment were coupled with its surge in petroleum production levels, which kept revenues down for Iraq and further weakened its economy prospects. Throughout much of the 80s, Kuwait's oil product was above its mandatory quota under the OPEC, which kept international oil prices down. Iraq interpreted that the Kuwaiti refusal to decrease oil production as an act of aggression towards the Iraq economy, leading up to hostilities. So they were having oil battles, and petroleum production battles, and so I guess Iraq needed Kuwait to calm down because they weren't being able to produce as much and make their economy flourish like Saudi Arabia's was. All right, and it says the invasion of Kuwait was immediately met with international condemnation, including in Resolution 660 by the United Nations Security Council, which unanimously imposed economic sanctions against Iraq, and Resolution 661, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and American President George H.W. Bush deployed troops to and equipped unto Saudi Arabia and openly urged other countries to send their own forces to the scene. In response to the joint call, an array of countries joined the American-led coalition, forming the largest army alliance since World War II. The bulk of the coalition military power was from the United States, with Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, and Egypt as the largest led-up contributors in that order. Saudi Arabia and the Kuwait government in exile paid around $32 billion and of the $60 billion costs to mobilize the coalition against Iraq. All right, so it was all a money thing, you know. So America led the charge to build these nations up, right? To build these nations up to wage war against Iraq, led by America, man, led by America. So now, and half of these countries now are turning against America. See, that's the division that was caused by America. But what you root in the earth, right, you shall sow. All right, so that was a little bit about the Gulf War with Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. And from there, I want to go to the next major conflicts in 1998 with Operation Desert Fox. It says the 1998 bombing of Iraq, codenamed Operation Desert Fox, was a major 4-day bombing campaign on Iraq's targets from 16th to the 19th of December in 1998. By the United States and the United Kingdom, on the 16th of December 1998, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, announced that he had ordered strikes against Iraq. The justification for the strikes was Iraq's failure to comply with United Nations Security Council resolutions and its interference with the United Nations Special Commission. Inspectors who were looking for weapons of mass destruction, there we go with them weapons of WMDs, and Esau is the weapon of mass destruction. Esau is a weapon of mass destruction. Okay. Slacking. All right. Lost sound for a second. Okay, there we go. All right. So now, weapons of mass destruction. The inspectors were sent back in 1997 and were repeatedly refused access to certain sites, thus compelling the United States to launch strikes. However, Clinton's decision was criticized and challenged by many key members of Congress, accusing Clinton of directing attention away from ongoing impeachment proceedings against him. So they're trying to say, and really, he doesn't call the shots. The president doesn't call the shots. All right. It says the operation was a major flare-up in the Iraq disarmament crisis. The state goal of the cruise missile and bombing attacks was to strike military and security targets in Iraq that contributed to the Iraq's ability to produce, store, maintain, and deliver weapons of mass destruction. The bombing campaign had been anticipated since February 1998 and incurred wide-ranging criticism and support and outside of the United States. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates initially announced they would deny the U.S. military to use the use of local bases for the proposal of airstrikes against Iraq. All right, so now there's other divisions. Now they had a little bit of resistance with that. So moving forward, hold on. Moving forward to the next one I want to talk about is the Iraqi war. All right. So, this one. So you have the Persian Gulf crisis going on right now. Still going on. You have the Yemen civil war going on right now. You have Western Iran clashes going on right now. Iraqi insurgency going on right now. Iran, Saudi Arabia proxy conflict going on right now. Yemen crisis, Syrian civil war going on right now. Shia insurgency in Bahrain going on right now. Bahraini uprising. These are all wars that are going on right now to this day in Iraq or in the Middle East, in the land of Ishmael. And one particular one I want to talk about is this other Iraq war. All right, it says the Iraq war was a protracted armed conflict in Iraq from 2003 to 2011 that began with the invasion of Iraq by the United States-led coalition, once again, Esau, that overthrew the Iraq government and Saddam Hussein. All right, it says the conflict continued for much of the next decade as an insurgency emerged to oppose the coalition forces and the post-invasion Iraq government. U.S. troops were officially withdrawn in 2011. The United States became re-involved in 2014, and the lead of the new coalition and the insurgency of many dimensions of the armed conflict are ongoing. Right, so we just named a few of them. So this war hasn't really stopped, man. And, and it's all going to lead up to this. It's your How About Shimei Shai's doing, man. Let me find it real quick. Bear with me. All right. All right. This is before I get that, I want to go back to Genesis real quick. Genesis 16 and 12, it says, "And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him." Right? And that's the point that I'm talking about. So from there, all this is being staged and put together and set up by Yahweh by Shem Yahushai unto his glory, unto the deliverance of his people, man. And it says, this is Joel chapter 3, verse 1. It says, for behold, in those days, in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, and will also gather all nations, and will bring them into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, and will plead with them for my people, for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So everything that's over there is the Lord's land, man. Don't nothing belong to none of these nations. He'll let them know what they can have when he shows up and put them in order. But right now, the stage is being set to bring out the big war when Yahweh Shai and the holy angels are going to have a onslaught of slaughter against these other nations. And that's why you see the battle, the sound of war is in the air, man. That's why you see these things transpiring. That's why you see, conflict on every side, and on all. It just hasn't hit American soil yet, but it's coming. All right. So they think to divide these nations, right, and form a coalition together with the upper elites, right, and it's the whole divide and conquer thing, man. They form a secret society within themselves, within their families, and divide everybody else's family, so everybody would stay apart and not be able to form together to come against them. But Yahweh Shem Yahushai is gathering together his elect, all right, from the four corners from the four winds of the earth to destroy this devil, man. All right, alongside their deliverer, our deliverer, Yahweh Shai. All right, Lord willing, this lesson to edify and to serve his purpose with that, like Sekah Halayim, like Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Harikak Vadash, my Amath. Double honors to the elder apostles, the great millstone, and my elder Herawan as well. Salutations to the Akim that are pushing the truth and sincerity and truth. And peace and blessings to the men, women, and children that believe in the name of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Shalom.